Hi guys, and welcome back to the Cornish Angler. Now the sun is starting to make a few appearances, the temperatures are warming up, and it finally feels like spring is on its way. So it's time to get the Tench gear out and start this year's Tench campaign. Now last spring I had a real desire to go and catch some Tench. I've never purposefully gone after them before, and my last Tench was about 13 years ago, which I caught accidentally when I was carp fishing. Now there's not actually many venues in my area that hold a good stock of Tench. However, I am a member of a syndicate that's my local reservoir, and after walking around and talking to some of the carp anglers, it became pretty obvious that there was a good head of Tench in here, and some of them were pretty decent sizes as well. Now it's pretty much impossible to estimate how many Tench are in here or how big they go. This used to be a really popular carp fishing venue many years ago, but unfortunately they stopped fishing quite a few years ago as well. But over the last few years they've started opening the fishing back up, first of all to syndicate members only, and now during the winter months you can pike fish here just for a month at a time. Now over the years this venue has got really wild. It's a nature reserve, so people are allowed to walk along the footpaths, but other than that, the reservoir has been left to do its own thing. So during the summer months, the water is pretty much covered by weed from top to bottom in a lot of places. The fish have been left to do their own thing, so yeah, it's really hard to estimate what the stock levels are like and how big these fish grow. But at least I knew after talking to the carp anglers there was a good stock of Tench in to go at. So I got some gear and tackle together, and I found some likely looking spots that I started raking out clear and pre-baiting. Over the next few months I had some pretty good success. I was catching a few Tench on most sessions, the average being about £5 and the biggest going to £8.5. I was also getting some pretty decent bream and some decent rudd and roach as well. So it's looking promising, and I was starting to think maybe I could catch myself a double figure Tench. The only thing of last year was that I didn't start fishing for the Tench until the start of July. Now I've since figured out that actually if I want to catch a double figure Tench, my best chance is to fish it in spring before the fish start spawning and they're at their max weight. So this year I've got a change of approach. I'm going to start fishing now, the start of March, and really fish hard for them until the end of June. That should give me a better chance of landing a double figure Tench, not only because they'll be at their max weight, but also the weeds won't be growing at its fullest just yet, making it easier to rake out and prepare some swims. So the other day I popped up here to investigate this swim in more detail. It's a swim where I had good success last year. I caught a good number of fish from here, and I also lost a really decent fish as well.
No. That was, yeah.
The water here is a lot deeper, which means I can't wade out and rake the swims over like I have done in other swims. Instead, I'm gonna have to pre-bait regularly and let the fish do the work for me. If needs be, I will get a little castable rake and do it that way. But I did find last year by pre-baiting regularly, the fish kind of pick off the weed and clear the spots for me. So that should mean I'll have some nice clear spots in amongst the weed. So the Tench should feel quite safe and comfortable feeding in those areas, giving me a good chance of a bite. But before I started fishing, I wanted to really investigate the area in great detail to see if I could find a spot within a spot. Is there an area out there that's going to get me more bites by fishing tight to it? So a few months ago I invested in an underwater camera. It's the Western Escape Cam, and I originally bought it for the pike fishing. I wanted to attach it to my lure rod and see if I could get some action from a pike hitting my lure. But since then I've realised that this camera is going to be a really useful tool for my other types of fishing as well. By casting it out and letting it sit on the lake bed, I'm going to get a perfect picture of what it's looking like and whether that spot is going to be any good or not. Hopefully I'm also going to get some footage of the fish feeding on the area and hopefully picking up my hook bait, so I can see how my rigs are working, how my bait application's going, and see if I can make any small changes to maximise my time on the bank and give me the greatest chance of catching more fish. So yeah, the other day I came up to the swim just with a rod and camera, and basically all I did was cast the camera out, let it sit on the lake bed for 5 or 10 seconds, then I'd reel it in a little bit, let it sit again for 5 or 10 seconds, and just repeated that process until the camera was back on the bank. That way I could cover a lot of water and get a real good idea of what the lake beds look like at different distances. So what I did was I cast the camera to the same spot 3 or 4 times just to get a really accurate look at what it was looking like, and then I'd cast 3 or 4 times on another spot. And this is the footage that I collected from that little session. So my first 5 casts were to a spot that produced the most fish for me in this swim last season. The footage shows pretty much what I expected to see. The bottom was fairly clear to begin with a sandy silk type substrate. It looks a little soft, but not compared to some of the other spots we'll see later. But it was soft enough that the method feeder would sink slightly into it and cause a slight cloud of silt. As we bring the camera back towards the bank, it starts to get weedier. It's not growing yet, but you can see that it definitely will in the warmer months. This came as no surprise, as quite often when I hooked into a fish, it would seem to hit a bank of weed as I was reeling it in. Casts 6 and 7 were towards a tree that was quite close in to the right hand margin. It's shallower than the other spot, but it's still about 5 or 6 foot in depth. As we bring the camera back, we can see there's quite a bit of weed present and various other snags that could cause problems with presentation and line breakages. Casts 8 and 9 were to the tree on the left hand side. This spot is shallower again, around 3 to 4 foot in depth. It starts off fairly clear, but quite silty, and as we bring the camera back towards the bank, we start to come towards some weed. So if I do decide to fish this area, I think I'll fish it just past the tree where the lake bed is a lot clearer. Casts 10 and 11 were to a spot much further out. We can see the lake bed is really clear, almost like a sandy bottom at the bottom of the ocean. This makes sense, as when I fished it last summer and autumn, I never had any problems of weed out there. However, what I didn't realise was just how soft the bottom is here. At times, the camera sank quite far, and that's taken into account how light this camera is, and considering that weight is spread out over about 15 centimetres or so of camera. I can imagine a method feeder full of ground bait with that weight in a concentrated area sinking quite deep into the silt. This might explain why the fishing was a lot less productive, with only 1 bream, 1 eel and a few roach being caught from that spot. An inline method feeder probably isn't the best choice of rigs and setups in this situation, especially with the short hook links I use. I can imagine the presentation being quite poor, with the method feeder sinking deep into the silt and the hook link poking into the air, if that hasn't been dragged under the silt too. So if I'm to fish that area again, I think I'd swap to a helicopter setup. This will allow the method feeder to sink into the lake bed, but allow the boom of the hook link to slowly sit on top of the lake bed without being dragged under. This should give me much better presentation. My last few casts were back towards the productive spot I was casting to at first, but slightly to the left. Last summer there was quite a big weed bed in that area, and you can see some of the remains of it on this footage. So even though it's only 10 yards from the really productive spot, you can see it's going to get much weedier here. So I probably won't use that slightly left area to fish in, but I am happy that there will be weed nearby, as it offers safety and natural food to the fish. So the footage confirmed some things that I thought I already knew. The nice productive spot just out in front of me was nice and clear and nice and easy to present on. But the spot to my right that's slightly further out had much softer and deeper silt than I thought. That's really good information, so I can change my setup for my future sessions. By swapping to a helicopter setup, I can hopefully land a lot more fish from that area than I did last season. Right guys, you'll have to excuse any wind interference over the next few clips. There's a strong southwesterly pushing down into this end, and yeah, it's pretty strong, so you might hear a bit of wind. I've done my best to get in some shelter, so fingers crossed it's not too much. But I'm here for my first tench fishing session of the season. This is the swim where I came down and pre-baited a few days ago, and it's also the swim where I chucked the camera out as well and started investigating the swim a little bit better. I'm fishing with two rods. The right hand rod has got a banded pellet with a small PVA mesh bag of pellets as well alongside the method feeder. So a good amount of attraction on that rod. I've actually just had a few little indications on my bite alarm, so maybe there's some fish in the area. The left hand rod is the rod with the camera on. That's got a bait I did really well with last season, which is these. These are the mainline dumbbell wafters, and it's a sweet corn flavour. They were originally a 10mm bait, but I've trimmed them down to 12mm because in general I was getting more bites on that slightly smaller bait last season. Again, I've got a method feeder with that, and my method mix is this one from Dynamite. It's a sweet tiger, and yeah, it's quite light in colour. That colour matches the lake bed actually, and yeah, very sweet smelling. I did use a variety of ground baits last season. Didn't seem to make too much difference which one I used. This bag I had left over, so yeah, I was going to use it up. And before I go, I'll probably throw a few handfuls of pellet and a few balls of ground bait in as well, just to keep the swim topped up and hopefully start getting some fish in the area. Now, the rod with the camera is fishing on a spot that, to be honest, looked the best looking back at my footage from the other day. It's also the spot where I got most of my fish from the swim last season. So yeah, I'm hedging my bets on that one. Hopefully that's the rod that goes, and we can get a bit of footage of a tench picking up the bait and ripping off. I'll be honest, tonight is a bit of an experiment. It's more about seeing if that camera sits nicely on the lake bed and it's going to get me some good footage, or if I need to make a few adjustments by adding a little bit of weight to it to get it sit just how I need it to sit. If I can nick a bite, then ideal, but yeah, not that expectant, not that hopeful, but you've got to be in it to win it. I'm here fishing. If not today, hopefully over the next few weeks we can start to see a few tench on the bank. Rig wise, I've just got some short fluoro hook links. I'm hair rigging on the dumbbell wafters and I'm banding on the pellet. It's all the rigs I used last year. There's a small anti-tangle sleeve on there. The only thing I've added is a tiny shot weight. I think it's like a 0.05, just to try and get that mono to sit dead flat on the lake bed. So all that's left to do now is keep recasting the rods probably every 45 minutes, get some fresh bait in the area and wait it out. I'm going to fish to about 7 o'clock, so just on darkness. It's about 5:30 now. I've been fishing about half an hour. So yeah, very short session, but long enough hopefully to get a bite. Right, so this is my setup. There's my little wafter, size 10 hook, little red liner there, mono hook link, anti-tangle sleeve. That comes up to my method feeder, and I've stuck that in the end of the camera, so that's all kind of one piece. I'm hoping the weight of the method feeder will keep that camera in place like that, looking down towards my hook bait. Come up from there, I've just got 1 meter of tubing. That's just help it pin down to the bottom, and also if there are any rocks or strong bits of weed, just protects my main line from being snapped off. So yeah, let's get that back out there. In case you're wondering what my setup is, I've actually gone a bit heavier on this rod. So this is actually the rod I was using for my pike fishing. It's a RAF inshore lure fishing rod. So I actually bought it for fishing off the rocks for mackerel and bass and wrasse and things like that. But yeah, it was an ideal rod for the pike fishing. At the minute I've just got a cheap AliExpress reel on there. That's loaded up with some 20-pound line. You might think that's pretty excessive for tench fishing, but it can be pretty brutal here. There can be some big snags. And yeah, I've got a 150-pound camera on. I don't really want to lose it by snapping off. My hook link is £8, so if anything, that should be the thing that breaks, not my hook link, not my main line. So yeah, hopefully my camera is pretty safe. On the other rod, on my other setup, I've got a Daiwa carp feeder mini method 10Q. So yeah, this is the sort of thing I usually use for the tench fishing. I'm missing the bobbin, so I've got a massive closed peg on there. It actually works quite well, to be fair. And again, another cheap AliExpress reel. This place can be pretty brutal, and yeah, I've gone through quite a few reels, to be fair, so I'm just going to start using some cheap ones. They last the season, so yeah, for what, a £5, I get pretty good value for money out of them. The main line on that is £10. I can't remember, I think like they're Berkeley, top of my head, can't quite remember. But yeah, and then I've got some Sonic bite alarms. They're the SKS's. These are actually my old bite alarms. I've got a different set for my carp fishing. So yeah, keep them separate. Keep these in my bag, so I've always got them to hand. And then I've just slotted my bank sticks into these old metal poles. It's a bit easier than trying to drive it into the stony bottom here. And there's my net. So that's my pike fishing net, but it's got a nice long handle on it. Nice big deep net for holding fishing if I need to. And yeah, nice and light to carry, nice and easy to carry around. So yeah, that's my setup. There's my tub of ground bait. There's a box of pellet, a few mesh bags made up. And yeah, there we go. Travelling nice and light. Pretty much all my stuff will fit in this bag. My rods will fit it down here. Probably my biggest item is my unhooking mat. It's a bit overkill for here, but yeah, rather have one too big than too small. Right, going to a fish, and yeah, it feels quite tenchy. It's been a good scrap so far. Has headed over to my other line, so hopefully I can get it back over. There we go, like the dramas. What is it? Can't be a bream. A little glimpse of the golden belly. A really good scrap. Decent fish to be fair. Oh nice. Not a tench, it's a carp. Well, that I was not expecting. Little common carp. Nice deep water there, so I'll let them sit there, recover. And yeah, getting the hooking mat set up. get this rod back out quickly. Well, that was on a little size 10 hook and a little 8mm pellet, believe it or not. A little metal feeder. Whoa, brilliant. Right, get some ground bait. Right, I was not expecting this evening. Didn't have any carp at all last year. I might have lost one. I had a take that was pretty strong and it ended up bending my hook. So that possibly could have been a carp. But yeah, I've got this small but pretty chunky common carp. Probably about £8, something like that. And they did actually stock some carp late last year, I think about October, late September sort of time. They netted they net them, or they caught some from another reservoir in Cornwall and put some of them in here. And I reckon this might be one of them. I mean, it's an immaculate fish. Couple of old hooking marks in there, I think. So yeah, it's been caught before. I reckon this is probably stocked from last year. I don't think this is one that's been bred in this reservoir, but nonetheless, really good scrap on the light gear. I did think it was a tench to begin with, especially I saw this little golden belly and I thought that was a really decent tench. But there we go, not going to complain. That was just on a little 8mm banded pellet, little mesh bag of pellets with it alongside the metal feeder. So yeah, chuffed with that, to be honest. I'm going to get him back, the rods are back out, I've got about 20 minutes left. Let's see if I can nick another fish before I go, but if not, a nice way to end. Right, one last look. Well, this one goes back to his own. Thanks, mate. And away he goes. Get in. Right, got that rod back out and I've just redone the other rod as well. I've got about 20 minutes left of fishing, I think. It's just getting a bit dark now. Just trying to use the light behind me so hopefully you can see me. But yeah, heart is pumping. Chuffed with that carp. Not what I was after, but I'm not going to turn down a carp from this place, certainly. There's not many carp in here. I think originally there's probably, I don't know, a dozen, 15 carp left, and I think 10 went in last year. So over what, 40, 50 acres, 25, 30 fish. I'm pretty happy to get one of them. Looking forward to seeing what the underwater camera picks up. Unfortunately, that wasn't the rod that went. It was the right hand rod that went off. But I have had a few twitches and a few bleeps and things on the left hand rod with the camera on. So fingers crossed there's something there to see. But if not, I'll keep trying. And hopefully next time it'll be that rod that goes. Probably going to end the session, well, end this video of this session here anyway, just because it's getting dark. I'm going to slowly start packing a few things away. Yeah, maybe I'll get one more fish, maybe not. I'm happy with that fish I did get. Well, in again. This one does feel tenchy. This is on the camera rod, but it's quite dark now. I don't know if we would have picked it up. It's a lovely looking tench. That's long. Right, oh, that's blinding me. I'm not sure how well you're going to see this guy, but it's a really long fish. Lovely, lovely green colour. Alright, alright, alright. He's lively. calm down. There you go. You still haven't it. There we go. Right, yeah, hopefully you get some idea of what this fish looks like. It's a beautiful green colour, really olive green. Nice big pecks on him. Yeah, really long fish. Probably 4.5, 5 pounds. So I can't really look at the camera because I've tried to get a torch on me and it's blinding me. Yeah, I'll get a few snaps of him in the mat and yeah, you might get an idea of what it looks like. But yeah, beautiful fish. And yeah, pretty much pitch black now, so I'm going to call it a day. What a way to end. That was on the underwater camera, but how much it picked up I'm not sure yet because yeah, it's quite dark, which is a shame, but at least he's happy to eat in front of the camera. I'll get a few snaps, put them back, and yeah, call it a day. So there we go, a really good and positive start to this year's tent fishing campaign. That common carp was a really nice surprise, especially as there's so little carp in this big body of water. It's also really good and reassuring to know that my tackle was up to the task. And I also had the bonus of landing a tench just before I went home. Like I said before, I wasn't really expecting any tench this early on, so that bodes really well for the rest of the campaign that they're already on the feed. That tench did come on the rods with the camera on, but unfortunately it was just a little bit too dark to pick up what was going on. But again, reassuring to know that the tench were willing to feed in front of the camera and it wasn't putting them off at all. As it was starting to get dark, the camera did pick up on a bigger fish entering the swim. It's quite hard to make out exactly what it was, but to me it looks like it could have been that common carp that I caught. But what do you guys think? Was it the common carp or was it a tench? I'll be interested to see what you guys think in the comment section below. When it was still light, I saw plenty of roach going into little feeding frenzies and hitting the bait around my feeder. I also saw a few pike entering the swim as well. Not the species I was intending to see today, but all good information I can learn from. Watching the pike check out those areas the roach have been feeding in has definitely given me some food for thought of how I'm going to approach my dead bait fishing next season. And seeing all those roach attacking my feeder and picking up my hook bait plenty of times has just given me that reassurance that my rig is always going to be presented nicely. I'm sure some of you are wondering why I use an anti-tangle sleeve and why I don't put my hook bait on top of my feeder, but I think this footage shows that those smaller fish are going to be pecking around my hook bait almost instantly and disturbing it off the feeder anyway. So one, my hook bait wouldn't stay on top of my feeder for long anyway. Two, if I did place my hook bait on top of my feeder, it's likely that as soon as that bait gets disturbed, my hook link and my hook could get wrapped around my method feeder and end up tangling and not presenting as I want it to. And three, with that anti-tangle sleeve, my rig is definitely resetting how I want it to. If I had a really supple hook link on there, such as braid or a longer hook link, it's quite likely that when those small fish pick up my hook bait, it's just going to end up tangled, in a mess, and not presented how it should be. Now, obviously that's just one session to go off, so I do plan on using lots of different tactics, different methods, helicopter rigs, different types of feeder and different baits, just to see how they all work and see which one is going to be the most productive in the different swims that I fish. Perhaps if you have a certain method that you want to see underwater yourself and you want me to try, pop a comment below and I'll try my best to attempt those methods for you. So far that camera has proved to be a really useful tool. I'm sure over the coming months I'm going to learn a lot about the tactics I'm using and also the behaviour of the fish. Hopefully I can learn from that, put it into the tactics I'm using and land a lot more fish. But for now, that's the end of this session and the end of this video. Hope you've really enjoyed it. I do plan on coming up next week, so there should be another video out shortly. I might try and switch things around a little bit and fish a helicopter rig if I decide to hit that long spot. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Until then, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you again soon.